Do you know what it's like to realize that a person you loved, the one you shared memories, secrets, and warmth with, is no longer here? That even if you search every corner of the world, you'll never find them again. No matter what we do, no matter how many tears we cry, they're not coming back. The moment they took their last breath is the moment they took a part of us with them. Because it's not just them that's gone, but a large part of us as well. A part that we will never get back. Have you ever felt that way too? I know that some of you might still be hurting because no matter how much time passes, that wound continues to ache. Isn't that why we turn to stories that shows the exact same suffering and pain we went through? Stories that we can cry to. Because one of those stories is Anohana, the flower we saw that day. An anime that vividly depicts the excruciating pain of losing someone. It's a story about a group of childhood friends who lose one of their own in a tragic accident they believe they have caused. And with the overwhelming guilt they all felt, their friendship broke apart. As they all blame themselves for the death of their friend. And as they cope with their grief, some are heavily affected, and some takes it way too far. But if one thing is certain, it's that this girl had left a deep hole in their hearts. This just goes to show that death doesn't choose who to take. It comes for everyone. The young, the old, the wicked, or the innocent. You never know where the last time you'll see someone will be. Because for all you know, the person beside you right now might be gone tomorrow. A scary thought, isn't it? Death is inevitable, and so is losing the people we love. As we grow up, we'll continue to lose more and more people, and that's just a fact of life we can't avoid, you know. And I think one of the most uncomfortable facts in life regarding about loss and grief is our parents would pass away before us. They might not say it to you, but they've already come to the terms with the fact that one day they will leave us behind, whether we're ready for it or not. Still, knowing this truth doesn't get rid of the pain we experience or will experience upon the death of a loved one. We're going to break down, have nightmares, and experience hallucinations. Sometimes we might even wish that we could have joined them in death so that we won't have to feel this way anymore. And this reminds me of a time back when a random girl from my school approached me and we became acquainted, probably around 5 years ago. We were casually talking, sharing our interest in trying to get closer. But the very next day, while we were discussing mundane stuff, she suddenly opened up about something so personal that it kind of caught me off guard. Basically, she told me that she had lost someone she was deeply close to, and it got to the point that she had to force herself to stop studying just to grieve. Now, I had no idea how the conversation took such a dark turn, because when I tried to remember, nothing was leading up to the topic. But if anything is certain, I remember how weak her voice was. It was like looking at cracked glass, where the slightest of touch could shatter her. I guess she had been holding that in for a while. I'm used to people venting to me about their personal problems, but I just met this girl a day ago. Even so, I realized that the pain and grief she had been carrying at the time must be so overwhelming that she had to let it out. Not just because she trusted me, but because she couldn't bear the pain alone anymore. And this memory of her was constantly on my mind while I was watching this anime. In a way, it gave me perspective on the pain of loss and grief that she felt back then. It's reflected through the characters of this anime, especially our main character, Jinta Yadomi, or Jintan, as his former friends call him, as they lose Honma Meiko, or Menma. When the whole group tried to ask if Jintan liked Menma, only to be embarrassed and ran away as Menma chased him. But in doing so, she slipped into the river as he chased him, and was carried away to her death, leaving everyone traumatized and scarred for the rest of their lives. But that makes you wonder, how does trauma really work? Well, the key thing about trauma is that when we experience a negative event, we tend to dwell on it, ruminating over the past repeatedly. Then the mind has two paths it can take. It can either heal or fail to do so. The mind that successfully heals from the trauma of losing a loved one experiences what we call healthy grieving. In this process, we take something from that traumatic event and integrate it into ourselves. Essentially, we incorporate something from the person who died, whether it's their wisdom, memories, words, or ideologies, into our own lives. But this isn't about being stuck under death. It's about coming out of the traumatizing experiences emotionally healthier and stronger while carrying a part of them with us so that they may live on through us. This is really different from repeatedly ruminating over that event. which happens when a brain fails to heal and move forward. Your mind will be stuck in a loop, repeatedly going back to the specific memory over and over again, manifesting psychologically as flashbacks. And there are many other things that can happen to a person's well-being if the brain fails to thrive. The most common response to such a negative event is isolation, because their emotions are too much for them to handle. So they kind of shut down in a way that even social interaction is hard to execute. But I think the scariest and most bone-chilling effect that grief can have in a person is bereavement hallucinations, which are hearing, seeing, and even feeling the dead. I've heard stories from my peers of how sometimes in the dead of night, they can hear their loved ones whispering into their ears, or how they visit them in their dreams, telling them everything is going to be alright. It's a very scary phenomenon, and that's what Jintan experienced as he isolated himself from everyone. Menma suddenly appeared before him while he was playing video games years after her death. He didn't seem to be surprised though, as he just casually said she was just hallucination manifesting now after battling up years of trauma and stress. A summer beast, as he called it. But this ghost is demanding Jintan to fulfill her wish, a wish she doesn't even know herself. She did ask him what happened to the childhood friend group though. Sadly, Jintan had to break the bad news that everyone drifted apart, and no one really was the same anymore. Everyone had changed, and they were practically unrecognizable. There's a scene when Anaru, this orange-haired girl, visits Jintan to deliver him his summer homework and is hostile towards him. So, with that one interaction alone, you can get a full picture of how this seemingly close friends were affected by Menma's death, turning them against each other. But how did the friend group broke off exactly? Well, Jintan was actually the leader of their friend group named Super Peace Busters, as they found a random shed in the woods and made it their secret base. One day, however, a boy from their group, Yukiyatsu, came up with a plan to reveal Jintan's true feelings about Menma. Knowing that Anaru had feelings for Jintan and Yukiyatsu had feelings for Menma, he convinced Anaru to ask Jintan directly while they were all gathered. And so Anaru asked Jintan if he liked Menma. He got so embarrassed that Jintan called Menma ugly, but stopped midway through his sentence and ran home. While she was chasing after Jintan, she slipped and fell into the river, where she was carried away and died. And along with Menma, the entire group's friendship died with her. It seemed that there was no fixing this friendship, but that wasn't the only thing that Jintan lost, because shortly after Menma's death, her mother died as well. That's why he shut himself off from the outside world and refused to talk to anyone. This shows how trauma and loss can affect a person. Not only do you suffer from different mental issues, but it also affects your ability to form and maintain relationships with people. If you take a look at people with a history of trauma of any kind, you'll find that they consistently have trouble with relationships or friendships. This is because trauma causes problems related to the self, whether it's self-esteem, your sense of identity, or cognitive function, including the ability to form relationships. Now let's take a look at why. A relationship is a connection between you and me. So if I have a problem with myself, there would be a problem with the relationship. For example, pushing other people away and not letting them in, which Jintan was basically doing. Going back to when Anaru visited Jintan, she didn't actually hated him despite how she acted. In fact, it's the opposite. Despite all these years, she still had feelings for him and wanted to be friends with him again. But Jintan wouldn't let Anaru in and pushed everyone away because of the problems he had with himself. He's very insecure, has terrible social skills, and has a short temper. So Anaru was just responding to what Jintan showed her. That's why he thought she had changed for the worse. It's easier to blame others and put them in the wrong than to tell yourself there's something wrong with you. That you have a problem, even if this problem within you isn't your fault. But Jintan wasn't the only one like this. In fact, there was someone much worse. And it's none other than Yukiyatsu, the popular guy who seemed perfect in every way, and the same guy who got rejected by Menma. Nobody would have thought he was taking Menma's death extremely hard, since it looks like he has his life together. And the first time he met Jintan in years was when he encountered him while walking with Shiruka, the only childhood friend who stayed by Yukiyatsu's side. He mocked Jintan for mentioning Menma and how Jintan could see her. But what was actually happening was Yukiyatsu projecting his insecurities onto Jintan, because behind that facade was a dark secret he was hiding from everyone that was exposed later on. Shortly after their encounter, Jintan met Popo, a very energetic guy who readily believed Jintan could see Menma and that she was asking for a wish. So he invited everyone to meet up and be friends again to grant her wish. The first night, everyone showed up with Yukiyatsu being late. He told Jintan that he could apparently see Menma too, and that his version of Menma didn't want her wish granted, to which the actual Menma, the one only Jintan could see and hear, disagreed. Then Yukiyatsu left. But the following night, when everyone but Yukiyatsu gathered again, Popo claimed to have seen Menma with his own eyes while he was taking a leak, which caused everyone, including Menma herself, to go look for this Menma Popo saw. But as Jinten was chasing this other Menma, her hair fell off as she tripped, revealing who it really was, Yukiyatsu himself. This was the dark secret he was keeping from everyone, his insane obsession with Menma, completely mimicking how she used to look. This just shows that, despite looking fine on the outside, he never moved on from Menma's death. All these years he was in denial and was using Shiruko as an excuse to buy gifts for his imaginary girlfriend, when in reality, he was buying these things for Menma. And so Jinten confronted him as he lay on the ground, but Yukiyatsu retaliated and pinned down Jinten, shouting, "Can you see Menma now?" as he blamed himself for her death, saying if he hadn't forced Jinten to tell them about how he felt about Menma, and had he not confessed to her back then, she would still be alive. Then it hit him, the truth he had been trying to avoid all these years, as he was confronted with a reality he did not want to face. So he said these painful words.
だから、メンマはもういないんだ。どこにもいないんだよ!
Those words carry a lot of weight, containing years of pain and denial. Even though deep down he knows she's gone, he just can't accept it and kept on believing that she's still out there somewhere because her death did not feel real to him. It surprised me when he said those words because they reminded me of another series that uttered the same exact phrase. Seika from Bocchi the Rock. Spoilers for the manga, by the way. To tell the story short, her mom unexpectedly died in a traffic accident. And all this time, she had been running away from reality by distracting herself with her band, leaving Nijika, her little sister, all alone to grieve by herself. But she was soon confronted by reality when Nijika lashed out, refusing to go to school, saying that she wouldn't go anywhere because her mom wasn't here anymore. And then there it is, the same exact words Yukiyatsu said. She isn't here anymore. She isn't anywhere anymore. These two characters cope with their loss similarly by running away from it. They both experienced a state called dissociation, which is a psychological response to extreme stress or trauma, where the mind detaches from reality to cope with the overwhelming emotions. Hearing the news of someone close to you dying can freeze you. It's as if the moment you hear it, time just stops, and will only resume once you actually process your emotions and accept that they're gone. And while you haven't accepted it yet, you disconnect with everything as your body moves on autopilot. Yes, you may be able to talk with people, interact with them, and function in general, but that doesn't mean you're okay. You're going through the motions mechanically, like a robot that does its task automatically and repeatedly. And it may be a response to cope with your emotions, but all dissociation ever does is give you a temporary band-aid solution and make you worse in the process by numbing your emotions and twisting your sense of reality. But once you accept that they really are gone, you come across another problem. You're left dealing with the guilt of their death. Even if Yukiyatsu took it the hardest, it didn't mean everyone else was spared from the guilt of Menma's death. Jinten blamed himself for running away and never getting the chance to apologize to her when he called her ugly. Anaru because she fell in love with Jinten, causing her to agree with Yukiyatsu's plan to ask him about Menma. Shiruko for not being able to stop Menma even though she told her about Yukiyatsu and Anaru's plan. And the worst of them all, Popo, who watched Menma be carried away by the river. To some degree, it makes sense that they blamed themselves for her death. I'm not saying it's their fault Menma died. It's just on the surface, it looks like they indirectly caused her death, thinking if they hadn't done this or should have done that, then this would have never happened. And it's comparable but not exclusive to when you lose someone as they decide to end themselves. You tell yourself that maybe if you could have paid more attention to the signs, that if you could have talked to them more, if you hadn't ignored their message saying how much they love you, then maybe you would still be hearing them laugh today. The guilt boils down to thinking that you could have done something. However, to those who lost someone this way, I'll say this here and now. It was not your fault. You may have heard this a couple of times now, but their death was never your fault. There are just some things we can't control, you know. You can't control how the wind blows. You can't control what a plant would grow into. And you most certainly can't control when a life will end. Because as harsh as this sounds, it was never your decision. It was theirs. They've already set their mind to end everything by their own hands, long ago before anyone ever realized it. You just can't control what they do, you know. and at the very least, I'm sure that you made their lives worth living for a while. And the same goes for accidents. This time, it's not about the person that you can't control, but rather the circumstances. In the case of Menma's death, not being able to control how she fell into the river or how the currents carried her away. I mean, that's why it's called an accident, right? It's unpredictable, and no one meant for it to happen. But not a single one of them seemed to accept this fact, and they all tried to find salvation by trying to grant Menma's wish, even if the rest of them didn't believe that Jinten could really see Menma. But to them, I guess it would be more convenient if Menma really did come back from the dead to ask for a wish. Because by believing that she really is there, helping her get her wish would absolve everyone of their guilt. That's why they all played along with Jinten, especially Popo, who saw Menma die and wasn't able to do anything. Even though he had his doubts, he was very determined to grant Menma's wish. But this determination turned into desperation when Jinten told him that Menma was nearby. Popo repeatedly asked where she was and what her real wish was, which made Menma cry due to her inability to communicate with people outside of Jinten. Popo, along with the others, was desperate to bury their feelings of guilt and mourning by granting her a wish so they can move forward in life. And if you think about it, isn't this similar to why we hold funerals and other traditions for the dead? You can say that the main reason why we hold funerals is to respect the passing of someone and so that the family that was left behind can grieve. But deep down, we also do these not only so the dead can find peace, but so can we. Because funerals and many other traditions across multiple cultures serve as a final goodbye to the deceased. That even if you didn't have the chance to say farewell when they were still alive, you can do so by doing these. It's an act that helps us ease the feelings of dread that we feel inside. But sometimes, these acts can go so far. Everyone in the friend group decided that enough was enough when they visited Menma's mother to convince her husband to allow them to make fireworks, since apparently Menma's true wish was to send a letter to God when Jinten's mom was hospitalized. And then her mother broke down. It seemed that Menma's mother still blames them for her death. That's why Yukiyatsu said that they should just stop this game of make-believe, and Jinten should stop forcing his pain onto other people. Once again, Yukiyatsu was projecting here, but he's only right because they don't know Menma really is there. In any other context, what he said makes sense. However, Jinten didn't give up and said it was his responsibility to grant her wish, since he was the only one who could see her. So he worked multiple part-time jobs so he could afford the cost of making the rocket, even though there was no guarantee someone could make it for him. All the while, Menma decided to call everyone through Jinten's phone, which left everyone confused, because they were all met with silence when the call was made, and so they confronted Jinten about this in the secret base. He insisted it was Menma's doing, but this only made Yukiyatsu enraged because to them, it would seem Jinten was taking this way too far, just so he can find salvation. That's until Menma decided to write in her diary, which Jinten got from her mother days before her mom's breakdown, and told everyone to stop fighting. At this moment, they all believed in Menma, so they put all their efforts into granting her wish, so that they could all finally let go. After years of being haunted by the past, they could finally see the light at the end of the tunnel. They could finally put all their souls to rest once they helped Menma pass on through her wish. Yukiyatsu went as far as groveling at Menma's father's feet to get permission to place an order for a firework, extremely out of character for him, but at last, he gave them the go signal, and everyone pitched in to help with the production. Days later, they completed it and even invited Menma's little brother. It was her final hour. Everyone stood and watched as they slowly ignited the firework. It had all come to this, with all of them hoping that their worries would disappear along with the explosion and with Menma. Finally, it shot up into the sky, the beautiful combination of colors scattering throughout. It's all over, isn't it? But a chill ran down Jinten's spine. A voice that was supposed to be gone by now was still ringing in his ears. Menma's laughter echoed as she enjoyed the display. Yukiyatsu noticed that Jinten was still calling out to Menma, despite her wish being granted, and they all panicked, trying to figure out what went wrong. But why? Why didn't she disappear? That's because they all granted her wish with their selfish motives in mind, the same reasons why they all felt guilty about Menma's death. In truth, nobody had really let go of Menma. They were all still stuck on her death and decided to take the easy way out by granting her wish. So, in that case, what does it really mean to let go? Does letting go mean ignoring your feelings, pretending that it doesn't hurt, forgetting all about them so you can distract yourself with other things? Sounds like something we had all done in the past, right? But that's not what letting go is. The only thing that's happening by doing those things is temporarily shoving those negative emotions aside. Because what will happen when you come across something that reminds you of them? Those negative emotions that you locked away come bursting open just when you thought you had let go. Letting go doesn't mean brushing aside the hurt and pain you're feeling. Letting go means accepting all these overwhelming emotions. Let yourself hold on to these feelings as long as you need to. Let yourself feel everything. The pain, the love, the memories, the aching. Write down every emotion you're trying to avoid. Visit all the old photos you have together. Scream out how much you miss them. Hold on to your emotions until eventually the memories you have with them will no longer hurt you. And then you let go and heal. It's a process called catharsis, where you let all of these emotions that have been building up inside you out to emotionally cleanse yourself. But most people just don't get this. People tell you to be strong and move on or get over it. Nobody ever tells you that you need to process your emotions. We try to take as little emotional damage as possible by getting into instant gratification. We're not repairing anything by distracting ourselves with drinking, overeating, or doom scrolling. It makes us feel better, but it doesn't fix our emotions. And it's what gets us stuck. To heal is to feel, and it's the only way we can truly let go. And so that's what these characters did. They opened up and revealed their emotions, all the things they didn't want to admit, all the ugly truth they'd been trying to deny. By doing so, Menma slowly fades as Jinten goes home to fetch her to make things right. As he noticed her becoming transparent, he quickly grabbed her and brought her to the others before it was too late. However, he lost the ability to see her. But in Menma's own way, she tried to mend the situation by downplaying it as a game of hide and seek. While they all rushed out to find her, she wrote a letter to each of them, knowing she didn't have much time left. And when the sun rose, everyone found letters lying on the ground. Menma's personal message to each of them. With Jinten's letter was the most special as she admitted her romantic feelings for him. But this wasn't enough. Jinten said the game wasn't over since they haven't found Menma. And as they all begged for her to appear, in a stroke of miracle, everyone saw her. With this, there was only one thing left to say. It's really the end this time. So they took a breath and prepared to say this one line. We found you, Menma. She was able to pass on and everyone had their closure. Anohana is really a beautiful story despite all the iffy writings and the mixed reviews you find online. And apart from everything I've already talked about so far, I think one of its most important messages is that you should forgive yourself. Not just because you think you have responsibility for the death of a loved one, but to forgive yourself for not healing or moving on as quickly as you'd like to. Because some people beat themselves up for still being sad over a person's death, but there's nothing wrong with that. Healing takes time, and it might depend from person to person. Some heal after a short while, and others may still be holding on until now. I guess what I'm trying to say is, take as much time as you need to, but be sure to do it in a healthy way, because I'm sure some people are relying on you the way you rely of your former loved one. Move on, but don't forget about them. Carry on a part of them with you, but don't get stuck on them. And if their death is still hurting you, then don't be afraid to let it out and share it down with a comment. I might not be able to reply to everyone, but I'm sure there are people here that empathizes with you, so don't be afraid. In time, everything will fall into place. You know, with all this, it really makes you wonder about the value of life, given how it easily can be taken away from you. So, what really is the value of life? Well, lucky for you, I have a video talking exactly about that. But before you leave, if you enjoyed the video, then be sure to give it a thumbs up, because it really helps. But that's it for this one, and I'll see you in that video.